The year was 1177, and the man who would become Genghis Khan was nothing more than a fugitive named Temujin, betrayed, hunted, and half dead in the unforgiving jaws of the Gobi Desert. The sky was a searing sheet of copper. Sand devils danced across the cracked earth. Temujin's lips were split and blackened, his horse long dead, and his sword buried somewhere beneath a dune. He hadn't seen another soul in days, not since the ambush by the Merkits. He'd taken an arrow to the thigh. Infection had crept in, a black vein climbing toward his heart. He knew this desert would be his grave. He collapsed near a dry riverbed. Vultures circled. The world dimmed, and then he heard the singing. It was not a human sound. It pulsed in his bones, in rhythms older than speech. A harmony of whispers on wind that did not exist. The shadows under the rocks were darker than they should have been, and in the heat shimmer above the cracked earth, figures began to form, tall, robed, moving not with feet, but with intention, as though the desert itself made way for them. One of them knelt beside him, a woman, though her face was wrapped in a pale veil. She placed her hand on his wound. "Why you fight death?" she asked, her voice dry as dust, yet strangely melodic. "Because I have not yet conquered the world," Temujin rasped. A laugh, soft and ancient, rose from the circle of veiled figures. "Then we shall give you the means," she said. "But everything has a price." They carried him into the shade of an underground oasis, unseen on any map. There were no torches. Light came from the rock itself, a faint reddish glow, like the inside of a living beast. Here, Temujin learned their name. The Kolon, the Crimson Tribe, the ones who endure. They were not vampires in the way of European myths. They did not burn in sunlight, nor fear holy words. They were desert dwellers, warriors of an old blood, who drank only from the dying, and only in ritual. They did not consume to feed. They consumed to remember. Blood was memory, lineage, experience. Every drop they drank added to a chain of knowledge stretching back before Babel, before Babylon, before history itself. And they were dying. Their numbers had dwindled to dozens. Their ancient blood diluted by time, hunted by every empire that feared what they were. They needed a new vessel, one strong enough to carry the lineage forward, one born of battle, with no fear of death. Temujin was that vessel. The ritual began at moonrise. Temujin was laid upon obsidian stone. The woman. She called herself Sarnai, meaning rose, cut her palm and let a single drop of her blood fall onto his lips. Fire. It raced through his veins, tearing down every weakness he had. He screamed, body writhing as bones cracked, realigned, healed. The infection in his thigh hissed and vanished. His heartbeat slowed. His breath deepened. The Kolon chanted in a language that clawed at the edge of memory. His mind filled with visions. Riders crossing endless dunes, blades singing through night, forgotten empires swallowed by sand. He awoke standing, naked, unbroken, reborn. Sarnai stood beside him. "You are no longer just Temujin," she said. "You are Kolon Khan, Blood Khan." In the weeks that followed, Temujin learned what no mortal general ever could. The Kolon taught him how to sense the thoughts of men in battle, how fear has a scent and lies a pulse. They taught him how to heal by drawing breath near the wounded, how to transfer fatigue from his army into himself and burn it away, how to drink from his enemies, not to feed, but to know them, their tactics, their treachery, their gods. Each time he tasted blood in combat, he remembered entire lifetimes. He could not be poisoned. He could not be ambushed. He could not be broken. But most of all, he could not be alone. Because as part of the Pact, his seed carried the lineage. The Kolon had ensured that his descendants would inherit fragments of the gift, healing, strength, memory. And should any of them drink as he had, they would awaken fully. When Temujin rode back into the Mongolian steppes, he was not the same man. The tribes that had mocked him now followed him. The men who once betrayed him begged to kneel. In the battle of the 13 clans, arrows broke upon him like hail on stone. His horse died under him 3 times, and each time he stood up without a scratch. By night, his generals whispered that he did not sleep. By day, his enemies claimed that birds would not fly over his camp. Some said He drank the blood of the dying. Others said his sons could speak to wolves. But all agreed on one thing. He was unstoppable. And yet, he kept the Kolon secret. They did not ride with his armies. They remained in the desert, hidden, watching. A pact was a pact. The world was not ready for what they were. But he would visit them in private, riding alone across the sands once every year. There, in the underground oasis, he would drink a drop of memory from Sarnai's palm and whisper names of the cities he had taken. She would smile and reply, "You are not done yet, my Khan." But time does not wait, and even the greatest empires end. When Genghis Khan died, no body was ever found. His tomb, they say, is guarded by warriors who do not age and do not sleep. The Kolon vanished with him, fading into steppe legend. But the bloodline did not vanish. Even today, in the high steppes of Mongolia, travelers speak of golden-eyed herders who do not bleed from knife wounds. Children who vanish at age 33, only to return decades later, unchanged. A family that never appears in photographs. A prince with too many ancestors. The desert remembers, and the blood Khan watches. He was no longer just Temujin. By the year 1206, the world knew him by another name, Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. But behind the glint of his iron helm and the roar of his war horses, there was a truth no historian ever wrote down. His empire was not entirely built by men. It was forged in blood. Not just the blood he spilled, but the blood he shared. With sons, with generals, and with those few who drank in secret from the Kolon wells beneath the Gobi. The pact had not ended in the desert. It had only begun. Joki, Chagatai, Ogidi, Talyui, his sons were strong, cunning, and brutal in battle. But it was Talyui, the youngest, who bore the mark most clearly. He never slept. His wounds closed within minutes of battle. During the siege in the Shaper, a catapult bolt tore through Talyui's leg. By the time his horse reached the second wall, he was already galloping upright again. No crutch, no scar. The soldiers called it divine favor. The generals knew better. They had seen him rise from fires that would have charred a man to bone. They had seen him fight for 3 days without food, without rest, eyes glowing faintly gold in the torchlight. Behind every great conquest stood one of the Kolon-born. But only the inner circle understood what that meant. Before each major campaign, Genghis held a private rite in a sealed tent lit only by coals. The generals closest to him, the 9 bonds of blood, would enter silently, kneel, and pass around a carved obsidian bowl. Inside, the blood of a captured enemy king, mixed with fermented mare's milk and the ash of a burned city's flag. To drink was to remember. They would absorb not only the enemy's strength, but his strategy, his regrets, his final thoughts. These men began to share dreams, speak in half-phrases, finish each other's thoughts in battle. Together, they became a war machine no enemy could predict, because they had already seen how their enemies thought. To outsiders, it looked like genius. To the Kolon, it was ancestral memory in motion. In 1215, during the siege of Zhongdu, modern-day Beijing, scouts reported that the Mongols broke through a wall that had not even been touched by siege engines. Witnesses described a faint humming before the gate fell. Others claimed they saw a man walk through fire, blood dripping from his hands onto the stone, which cracked open like eggshell beneath him. Zhongdu fell in 3 days. In the Khan's camp, a single body was brought before him, a captured Chinese engineer with blood-soaked robes. Genghis approached and took a small dagger to the man's chest, not to kill, but to draw a thin line across the skin. He tasted the blood. A pause. Then he said, "He knew too much. And now I do." When the Mongol horde surged into Khwarezmia, tales of their inhuman resilience spread faster than their horses. Entire armies fled without a fight. One Persian commander threw a sword into the river and declared, "You cannot kill what bleeds sand." Historians blamed it on fear, discipline, speed. But local legends spoke of other things. Mongol soldiers who would burn and bleed by day, but rise again the next morning unscarred. Campfires that never went out, fed not by wood but by bone. Shadowy women riding with the rear guard, cloaked and veiled, whispering a tongue that made the wind go silent. The Kolon were not only guardians. They were scouts, healers, assassins. wherever the bloodline spread. So did their reach? There were few who tried to stand against it. The Alamut assassins made one attempt. In 1220, they sent 3 of their finest to strike down Taui during a feast near Herat. The assassins leapt through fire, blades drawn, and struck hard, only for Taui to rise moments later, impaling 2 and crushing the 3rd with his bare hands. Witnesses claimed his blood sizzled where it hit the stone. That night, Genghis summoned Sarnai to his tent. She emerged only at dawn, pale, silent. The next day, the mountain fortress of Alamut burned. No siege engines, no warning. Just silence and smoke and ash. The blood pact did not tolerate rivals. Not all his children bore the full colon gift. Some were carriers, flesh and blood of the blood Khan, but unawakened. Still, their lineages carried pieces of the pact. Heightened senses, a resistance to illness, eyes that reflected fire strangely, an ageless quality. By Genghis's decree, these carriers were scattered. Some ruled far territories, like the Golden Horde in Russia, the Yuan in China, and the Ilkhanate in Persia, but others disappeared. Some returned to the desert, to the Colon. There, in hidden enclaves, they bred in secret, preserving the purest strain. Every few decades, one would rise again. Each was stronger than the last. By the time of his death in 1227, Genghis Khan ruled over the largest contiguous empire the world had ever seen. But no official account recorded what happened in the days leading up to his final battle. Some say he fell from his horse. Others claim he was assassinated. But the Colon remembered differently. Sarnai herself was said to have stood over his body, not dead, but in stasis, heart slowed to a single beat per hour. The desert covered his tomb, and the bloodline vanished from public view. But every year on the longest night, riders with golden eyes are said to gather on the high plains of Burkhan Khaldun, where wolves do not howl and stars burn brighter. Genghis Khan was not just a conqueror. He was a vessel, and conquest was never the end. It was the awakening of a legacy written in blood. A legacy that waits. A legacy that remembers. And in the age of gene mapping, surveillance, and artificial blood substitutes, that legacy is stirring again. For centuries after Genghis Khan's death in 1227, the world believed his dynasty fractured into mortal realms, scattered across Eurasia by the ambitions of his sons and grandsons. But the truth, as always, lies in the blood. Though his empire crumbled, his true legacy, his bloodline, did not fade. It withdrew, like a knife pulled back before the final strike. And it was everywhere, hidden in plain sight. Scientists estimate that over 16 million men alive today are direct descendants of Genghis Khan. But within that number lies a far smaller, quieter statistic. A few hundred individuals who carry markers no lab has ever published. Genetic anomalies classified as non-standard regenerative traits. Gene clusters never before observed in Homo sapiens. A few were studied, and those who studied them disappeared. In 1957, a Soviet geneticist named Dr. Viktor Ruslanov published a confidential research note referencing a category, our variant found in rural Mongolian herders. Subjects showed a dramatically slowed aging process, advanced cellular repair, and, curiously, complete memory retention from early childhood. The day after his paper reached Moscow, Dr. Ruslanov's lab was declared non-operational. All 23 subjects were relocated. Their villages no longer appear on maps. Throughout the 20th century, travelers, researchers, and the occasional journalist passed through the Mongolian steppe, some seeking connection to the great Khan, others adventure. Some never came back. One such case was Dr. Amelia Werner, an American geologist from Stanford. In 1993, she led a small team to the Omnogovi province to investigate strange magnetic readings beneath the flaming cliffs. What she found was never fully reported. The team's last radio communication mentioned a cave system with organic mineral formations that pulsed faintly in the dark. 3 days later, all contact ceased. The only trace recovered was Dr. Werner's field journal, found abandoned in a jeep 30 kilometers from camp. Its final entry read, "They drink to remember, not forget, and I think I let them remember too much." Her remains were never found. Locals say she was taken by the Alton Sonic, the golden sleepers. Among nomads, hunters, and shamans, stories still circulate of families who do not age, of warriors who heal overnight from broken bones, of children born with eyes that reflect light like a cat's. They live in yurts that move too often to track. They speak little and trade only at night. They do not appear in photographs. When approached, they smile gently, kindly, and they ask questions, strange questions, about your blood type, about your dreams, about what memories you would give away if you could. If you answer truthfully, they thank you. If you lie, you never see them again. Satellite images taken in 2002 over Baikonur province revealed something buried deep beneath the earth, a spiraling cave network at least 2 kilometers wide. At its center, a chamber shaped almost perfectly like a human heart. The Soviets had known. The Chinese had tried to tunnel in. Even the CIA briefly classified the site under biothreat unknown, Site Crimson Echo. No one succeeded. Every drone sent down failed. Batteries drained. GPS scrambled. One camera returned a single frame before blacking out. A humanoid figure, veiled, walking barefoot through ankle-deep blood toward the lens. The cave was sealed. Officially, it collapsed, but locals say the cave was fed. In 2009, a private biotech firm named Novodyne began discreetly purchasing genetic samples from rural Eurasian clinics. They weren't interested in rare diseases. They were seeking non-oxidative mitochondrial anomalies. Translation: cells that don't die the way they're supposed to. Their database flagged 17 subjects across Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and western China. Each sample had 3 things in common: blood that resisted oxygen degradation, white blood cells that clustered around foreign DNA instead of attacking it, and memory patterns that did not degrade with age. Novodyne sent a scout team to investigate. None returned, but one camera drone recorded a final message etched into the ice wall of a Himalayan pass. It read, "Heirs do not share thrones. The bloodline does not want war, not yet. Instead, it watches, monitors. It has infiltrated quietly in NGOs, universities, even genetic startups. Every decade, a small child disappears from a city in Eurasia, sometimes orphaned, sometimes adopted, sometimes just vanished. They are selected, trained, not in schools, but in memory. The colon do not read books. They drink history, from bowls carved with generations of names. Every drop of blood consumed brings back not only knowledge, but entire lifetimes. 1 drop is a lesson. 100 is an army. And some, those born with the purest strain, have never forgotten anything since the day they were born. They walk among us now, silent, patient, waiting. In 2021, a Canadian team of archaeogeneticists working near the Congai Mountains discovered an unmarked burial site. 13 bodies arranged in a perfect spiral, their skulls pierced by obsidian pins. Carbon dating placed the tomb at 750 years old. But the mitochondrial DNA, it showed no signs of age. None, as if the cells were still alive. The research never reached peer review. A month later, the lead researcher, Dr. Hassan Qureshi, was found dead in his apartment in Ulaanbaatar. The coroner listed massive internal hemorrhage despite no visible wounds. His computer had been wiped clean, except for a single image left open on the screen. A satellite photo of the Red Cave, now glowing faintly beneath the surface. Have you ever met someone whose presence was too still? Whose stare felt like it carried lifetimes? Who asked about your family history the way others ask about the weather? Who stood too calmly near violence, or walked away from accidents with barely a scratch? Somewhere in their bloodline, somewhere far back, they carry it. The gene, the gift, the curse. They don't need armies. They don't need propaganda. They already know how this world ends, because they've ended others. The silent bloodline is not legend. It is preparation. And in part 4, the world finally begins to notice when it's too late. It began with a mistake. In a cryogenics lab nestled deep within the Arctic Circle, operated by Virion Biotech, a private military-adjacent genetics firm, a team of researchers cracked open a Mongolian tomb recovered from permafrost. Inside was a body unlike any they had ever seen. perfect preservation. No embalming. No decay. The heart had crystallized, still intact. The body belonged to a warrior entombed in obsidian wrappings, with a crescent scar across his chest and a seal carved into his ribs, a golden eye with 9 points. They named the project Specimen 47KH. But they didn't know they had opened a door that had been sealed for nearly 800 years. At first, the data was unbelievable. No DNA drift, telomeres fully intact, bone marrow still producing red blood cells. They believed they had discovered a mutation, a perfect template for human regeneration, something that could change warfare, disease, aging. What they had actually discovered was a living curse. Dr. Leonel Varga, the team lead, described an unsettling experience after interacting with the specimen. He claimed the dreams began 2 days after the initial biopsy. They weren't dreams, he wrote in his personal log. They were memories. I was riding a horse, holding a curved blade. My body moved like it remembered something I didn't. I remember the cold of the steppe. I remember killing. Others reported the same. And then came the incident. Security logs from December 14th, 2022, show all facility doors unlocking simultaneously at 3:19 a.m. The internal AI system was disabled from inside, something no one could access without retinal and DNA clearance. When backup teams arrived from Oslo, the compound was empty, not destroyed, not looted, empty. No bodies, no blood, no footprints in the snow. Just one message burned into the titanium walls of the containment chamber. Heirs do not share thrones. The specimen was gone. So was Dr. Varga. Across Eurasia, strange events began to ripple outward like shockwaves. In Ulaanbaatar, a historic museum fire revealed a hidden archive. Beneath the ashes, a concealed chamber filled with scrolls written in both classical Mongolian and a pre-Sumerian dialect. Scholars were baffled until one woman, Dr. Enkhti Adaram, translated a single phrase carved into the wall. The blood Khan will rise where the sky remembers. She disappeared the next day. In Astana, Kazakhstan, a freight train derailed. Among the wreckage, crates filled with bones marked with imperial Mongol seals. Military officials quietly classified the site. A single video leaked before takedown, showing a man walking unharmed through fire, eyes glowing faintly gold. Across every former domain of the Mongol Empire, stories began emerging. People disappearing, glowing symbols appearing in fields, wolves gathering in unnatural numbers. The bloodline was stirring. The United Nations Special Biothreat Council held a private session under code Argent Echo, reserved for incidents involving unknown biology or ancient weaponry. The report from Virion Biotech was marked Level 5 anomalous threat. One line was highlighted in red by intelligence analysts. Whatever this is, it's not evolution, it's memory. But it was already too late. In Dubai, a colon carrier posing as an investor made contact with a defense contractor experimenting with synthetic blood. Within 72 hours, the entire research team had resigned, citing loss of purpose and visions of empires. In Berlin, a biotech CEO slit her wrists on live television, whispering, "He is awake again. I've seen his eyes." What none of the modern powers understood was this. The colon didn't need weapons. They were weapons. And once a carrier consumed even a drop of activated ancestral blood, they remembered everything. Every kill, every strategy, every betrayal their forebears had lived. The blood echoed, woke them, rebuilt them from within. The few rogue descendants who tried to hide, tried to remain neutral, were quickly found, either welcomed back into the fold or erased. The blood Khan had awakened, and he wanted his empire back. On March 9th, 2023, a series of hacked broadcasts interrupted global satellites. All screens went black. Then a voice, calm, ancient, speaking in perfect Mongolian, rang out. You use your science to open what you could not understand. Now you will remember us the way all things remember the flood. We do not conquer. We awaken. Submit or drink. The final image was a golden seal with a single drop of blood falling into an obsidian bowl. As governments scrambled, One independent resistance formed quietly in the background. Echo Cell, a small group of historians, geneticists, and ex-intelligence officers who had long suspected the colon's existence. Among them, Dr. Lena Moss, an anthropologist who survived a 2007 kidnapping by a tribe in the Gobi Desert. Sergeant Imran Bek, Kazakh Special Forces, who once fought a man that didn't bleed. Yao Mingjun, a Chinese cryptolinguist who found ancient inscriptions that matched no living script, until he bled on them. Their mission, to locate the remaining dormant carriers before they could be awakened, but they were already being hunted. One by one, the bloodline was culling the herd, removing the weak, the impure, the unwilling. At the edge of the Altai Mountains, drone footage picked up a phenomenon now known as the Golden Convoy. Hundreds of riders, black horses, eyes reflecting firelight, and banners that hadn't been seen since the 13th century, banners of the Great Khan. Satellite scans showed elevated body heat far above human baseline, motion speeds inconsistent with standard cavalry, and most chilling, no audible heartbeat detected in over 30 individuals. These were not just warriors. They were heirs. NATO issued a non-nation biological threat warning. China deployed troops along its western border. Russia denied involvement, but quietly relocated sensitive installations out of Siberia. The United States initiated Operation Desert Gate, a plan to locate the original Colon cave system and destroy it with bunker-busting munitions. But how do you bomb memory? How do you kill something that heals through pain? How do you fight an empire that has already remembered the way to beat you? The Blood Khan walks again, not as a ghost, but as a man reborn from the blood of 1,000 ancestors. With every drop consumed, he grows stronger, more complete. He does not want diplomacy. He does not want revenge. He wants recognition. He is a legacy of Earth's greatest conqueror, weaponized by ritual, evolved through memory, perfected by time, and he has only just begun to gather his armies. No nation declared war. No borders were crossed. And yet, every military intelligence system on Earth lit up like wildfire. It began on the night of the new moon. In orbit, 6 communication satellites went dark simultaneously above Central Asia. Seismographs registered harmonic tremors in the Altai Mountains, not tectonic but rhythmic, like a giant's heartbeat. The Golden Convoy, once dismissed as tribal reenactors, had grown into a ghost empire on the move, and at its head rode a figure not born, but remembered, not revived, but recalled, the Blood Khan. He had no passport, no social profile, no recorded lineage, and yet his DNA matched 99.99% with every known sample of Genghis Khan's direct male line. Not just one descendant, but all of them. Interpol called it a genetic singularity. Echo Cell called it something else, the recollection. Using stolen Novodyne data, they confirmed it. Someone had reactivated a dormant colon carrier with full blood access, not through cloning, through ritual assimilation. Each drop of blood consumed, each memory absorbed, rebuilt him. The warrior who emerged was not just a man. He was the sum total of 1,000 years of conquest, a living empire in flesh. In the Russian region of Tuva, a forward operating base monitoring seismic anomalies went silent. Drones sent to investigate showed 142 soldiers laid out in perfect circles, eyes open, skin unmarked. No gunshots, no visible wounds. But their pupils were dilated to full black, as if they'd seen something not meant for human eyes. On the wall, someone had written in dry blood, "You studied our bones. Now we study yours." In a desperate move, world leaders gathered for an emergency G7 plus Security Council meeting in Geneva. Cybersecurity specialists warned that any digital retaliation would fail. Signals near the bloodline territories were scrambled by non-electromagnetic pulses. U.S. Admiral Sloan put it bluntly, "We're dealing with civilization inside our own, one that's watched, waited, and trained for centuries to overthrow us without firing a single shot." China moved 40,000 troops to the Mongolian border. Russia began recalling all field agents from Central Asia. The UN issued a worldwide cultural cease and desist on Mongol iconography, hoping to avoid triggering sympathizers. It didn't work. In Istanbul, a famous MMA fighter vanished after winning a match without taking a hit, only to reappear days later with silver eyes and scars he did not have before. In Oslo, a choir fell into trance during rehearsal and began singing in a forgotten dialect, matching the colon death rites. In Kansas, a farmer dug up bones bearing a golden seal beneath a lightning-blasted oak. The bloodline wasn't spreading. It was activating. Across continents, scattered carriers, those who had never known their ancestry, were being pulled by something older than instinct, a magnetic memory, a genetic recall, and one by one they answered the call. In early autumn, over 200,000 nomads gathered in silence at the foot of Burkhan Khaldun, the sacred mountain where Genghis Khan is believed to be buried. Satellite footage showed them forming a perfect spiral around a central circle where no one stood until nightfall. Then he emerged, riding a black horse draped in blood-red silk, wearing armor stitched from the bones of forgotten kings. The Blood Khan raised a single obsidian blade to the sky. The wind died, the mountain hummed, and across the world, descendants of conquerors felt their knees buckle. Some wept, some screamed, some remembered. No diplomats were summoned, no manifestos released. Just one signal. A golden seal burned into the side of the International Space Station's solar array. Its meaning was later decoded by Yao Mingjun, now the last surviving member of Echo Cell. Return what was never yours. When asked what that meant, Yao replied, pale and trembling, it means the world itself. Land, memory, sky, all of it. We've lived on loan, and the lender has come home. World powers launched Operation Iron Curtain, a coordinated military and satellite offensive across Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and northern China. But they didn't understand the terrain had changed. The colon used no tanks, no drones, no signals. They moved like ghosts, attacked at twilight, vanished by dawn. Wounded soldiers reported seeing their own comrades rise with golden eyes and fight against them, converted not by belief, but by contact. One field commander's last recorded words were, "They don't fight like us. They don't think like us. They don't even exist like us." The capital of Mongolia did not fall by siege. It fell in silence. Citizens reported seeing strangers among them, walking the streets, handing out scrolls sealed in wax. No one read them aloud, but everyone who opened one began to hum. The same tune, in perfect harmony. The next morning, the city was empty, not destroyed, just still. Every flag flew a single emblem, a black sun over red dust. In space, the International Monitoring Station picked up gravitational anomalies near the Earth's core, suggesting something was shifting the magnetic fields from beneath. A colon rite was underway, a blood ritual using the planet itself as a memory vessel. He's not rebuilding an empire, Dr. Lena Ma said in a final voice memo. He's rebuilding the age of blood, an Earth not ruled by flags or laws, but by remembrance. From atop the Temple of Heaven in Beijing, hacked and repurposed by unknown forces, a global transmission was broadcast. The Blood Khan stood, arms wide, red dust swirling around him. Behind him, the golden convoy knelt. He spoke once, and his words were translated into every language on Earth. You have forgotten. You live in forgetfulness. You build towers without foundation, laws without blood, pride without history. That ends now. He looked straight into the camera. Drink or be forgotten. The feed cut. All military efforts ceased within 24 hours. Not by force, but by collapse. The memory of war had been erased in select units. Commanders could not remember orders. Leaders couldn't recall targets. The colon had unlocked something terrifying. Not the future, but control over the past. The ability to edit memory through blood. And with that, the old world ended. In the Altai steppes, a new city rises, not of metal or glass, but of stone, blood, and silence. Children are taught history not through books, but by drinking a drop of elder blood under full moon. The sky glows slightly red where the Khan walks. He does not rule with speeches. He rules with remembrance. And every empire, every republic, every nation that once held dominion now kneels. The Khan has risen again. And this time, He never fell,